And then you also were saying that men don't usually wake up and walk in and say, "Hey, I've had an abortion. Like this is a trauma I need to deal with." Do you have women doing that, or do women also tend to have it come out in some different way? Do you like have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, I think women equally are affected by the message that it's not a valid trauma in our culture. So they're more likely to come for that issue, but very few. More likely women,
What do
yeah,
women
more likely women are going to
oh,
come for relationship problems or depression or anxiety or some addictions, things like that. When you ask them the question on the intake form, have you had an abortion in your past? Or have you lost a child due to miscarriage, abortion, things like that? They are more likely to want to work on that issue more than the man,
okay.
just because they
But
go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, so it seems like in both neither one of them is usually coming in for abortion, but the way that it's manifesting itself is going to be different, and the women are like quicker to be able to be like, oh, this is something I actually need to work on versus the man.
Exactly,
Is that
exactly,
a good summary?
exactly. Women just as much as men in our culture are invalidated for the abortion being a trauma. And so, yeah, there's going to be very few women that say, wake up in the morning and say, I want to go to talk to a therapist about my abortion. Um, Now, those that know that I'm a pro-life person, they know that I work in this field of abortion, healing. There are those in the pro-life world that seek me out and say that's what I want treatment for. But the general public would not do that.
Okay. And then do you think that abortion will ever be recognized as a legitimate trauma by the medical community? By because I know that's something I believe that you're working on. Can you speak a little bit about that, like the potential there?
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, we developed a group. It's a long name. I'll say it quickly. The American Association of Therapists Treating Abortion-Related Trauma. So it was an online group that I started with another person. We got together therapists that were licensed therapists in different states around the country. We wanted to keep political and religious issues out of the organization. We wanted to treat abortion as a legitimate trauma using evidence-based practice that the American Psychological Association respected.
Hmm.
So if we say it's going to be traumatic for men or women, you better treat it with evidence-based practice. So we set out to do that because what we said is we want it to be viewed legitimately, but in order to it be viewed legitimately, we have to treat it that way. So that was our goal. So we started 10 years ago. Now, where we're at right now is we're trying to develop curriculum to train therapists. And what we have is we have a 12 CEU credit curriculum that we developed. And so it will be a certification program for therapists to be trained in how to treat abortion as a trauma, but reproductive grief and loss in general. So it'd be like a certificate, reproductive grief and loss certificate, so that we can spread across the country and get more therapists trained so that the more numbers we have, the more evidence and research we have in treating it legitimately, it's more likely to be viewed as a trauma by the psychological world. Now, in my opinion, because the mental health world has failed this, it's what made it more legal longer.
Really?
Yeah, because see, if the mental health world would have stepped up, Christian or no Christian therapist, and done it legitimately, evidence based practice, they found out it was a legitimate trauma. They had the evidence and research. They could have took that and said to the Supreme Court or whoever, we are doing harm. The medical world, when they perform abortions, are doing harm to men and women. And the Hippocratic Oath by doctors would be violated. And at that point, the medical world would then have to take that research from the mental health world and go, are we doing harm or are we not doing harm? And if you're doing harm and you're violating the Hippocratic Oath, then we're going to stop it. But to
Interesting.
this,
So that could be one key.
yeah, to this,
That could be like part of this. Yeah, sorry.
exactly. To this
It's
day, the
glitching.
medical person, the person that performs an abortion, doesn't have that research that says you're doing harm. And so they can continue to do that, abortions, until someone comes along and says, wait a minute, you're doing legitimate trauma to that person you're giving an abortion to. You can't do that anymore. And we're going to pass a law that says you can't do harm to that client. But they don't have that research and they don't have that backing by the psychological world. So they can continue and say it's not harm.
Yeah. Because they don't recognize that a child's a child. So you're not going to be able to say do no harm based on that. But you might be able to get them to say do no harm based on how it's hurting the woman. Interesting.
Exactly. And then they would have to say, am I going to violate my ethical code? Am I going to violate the Hippocratic Oath of me going as a doctor and being trained to not hurt people,
Hmm.
but to help people? But they
Interesting.
can go to bed at night and have their conscience okay because nobody's saying that it's legitimate trauma and you're not hurting someone.